In today's episode, I talk about great introductory demonstrator pens, some work-friendly permanent inks, and how I would build a great customer service team. Hey there, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and it is November of 2016. Man, this year has really flown by already. I can't believe we're 5/6 through 2016 already. Seriously, like I don't know what happened. But anyway, it's episode number 144 of Goulet Q&A, which Alexander Peck on YouTube was so kindly to point out that today is one gross of Q&As. So sorry, Alexander, I'm not going to be doing a gross themed Q&A, but I did feel that you deserved a shout out for that because gross is 144 of something. So today is a gross of Q&As. Today is also Fountain Pen Day. The first Friday in November every year is Fountain Pen Day. It's something that started up 4 years ago, I believe it was at this point. And, Kerry Yeager heads that up. Great guy. Really has been spearheading the Fountain Pen Day thing. Of course, now it's becoming even more of a thing. We have a contest around it, and which has ended at this point. But, a lot of good, fun stuff going on with Fountain Pen Day, just bringing awareness about fountain pens. So be sure to go out there, look up the hashtag, and do something fountain pen related today, especially in the online community, would be fantastic. Also, in November's a big month, we had NaNoWriMo start up, which NaNoWriMo is short for the National Novel Writers Month. So it's basically a challenge to write a 50,000 word, I think it is, novel in the month of November, which is a lot. That's a lot of writing. And there's some very zealous fountain pen enthusiasts who want to write the whole thing by hand with a fountain pen, which I think is very commendable. But even still, if you're not going to do the fountain pen thing, at least participating in that, even on a keyboard, is pretty intense. So, it's a kind of a fun thing. I personally will not be participating in it because I just am not. But it's something that a lot of people are doing, so I wanted to bring your awareness of that. Also, November is No Shave November, which I did participate in last year. And honestly, I had not realized on some level that November was here already, and I had just waited a few days to shave. And Rachel was like, "Oh, I guess you're doing No Shave November." And I was like, "Oh, is that okay?" She's like, "Fine," So here I am. I'm not going to shave for the month of November, so you'll see me get perpetually beardier throughout the month. I should get a pretty good beard on by the time the end of the month rolls around. Should be kind of fun for you. Had Halloween earlier this week. It was on a Monday this year. Kind of a fun thing. If you're in the US, Halloween is a time where we terrorize children and then give them candy. So it's kind of a fun little experience. But my kids, we live in a very rural neighborhood, so we didn't do trick-or-treating around our own neighborhood because there's like one other family that has kids. And so not very fruitful there, but we did a little trunk or treat thing where you basically do it at my daughter's preschool, and people would give candy out of the trunks of their cars and decorate the back of their cars. It's kind of neat. And then there was a fall festival kind of local in our area that we went to instead. It was kind of fun. The kids got to jump on bouncy houses and, do all that kind of fun stuff, play like carnival type games and stuff to earn candy. It was pretty fun. So that was kind of a neat little experience. So make some good memories there with the kiddos. And, missed Q&A last week. I apologize. Did do a nice little interview with Linda Shrewsbury from Cursive Logics. That turned out really good. Linda was a great sport there and a pretty good interviewer, I thought, too. So that was kind of cool. And so I missed Q&A last week. Had taken some personal time. Just Rachel and I have been trying to take off a little bit of time because we don't do enough of that. But, it was nice. Just nice, kind of recouping a little bit. So that was good. What else is going on? Okay, lots of stuff, product-related things. You may have seen the video that we put out on the Conklin Nighthawk. So I'll zoom in a little bit because I got a few product things to talk about. I'll try to duck down here so you can still see my face. The Conklin Nighthawk, this is a revival of the Nighthawk that we previously had, which was a Monteverde Invincia, and these are both companies from Jaffa. It's kind of their parent company, parent brand, and they own both these brands. So we collaborated with Jaffa originally on the Monteverde Nighthawk, and then we were able to revive it from the ashes like a rising phoenix to make it into a Conklin brand this time. It's based loosely off the Conklin Durograph, and I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Ooh, excuse me. So, sorry about that. That was probably really loud for you folks in the audio, but Conklin Nighthawk is back. Carbon fiber pen, very light, very light. It's got a Goulet nib on it, so you can check out the full video there. I'm super pumped about this pen because I've been wanting for the last 3.5 years to bring back the Nighthawk. Also, I'm very excited and gonna sneeze again. Ugh, goodness. Okay, thanks. Sorry again. Really excited because we finally have the Nock pen case brand. We've been looking forward to this for a couple of years. The Nock Sinclair, which is a pretty cool pen model. Ta-da! So these are 2 of the 3 colors, but really cool. It holds 3 pens of pretty much any size, and then it holds 1 notebook, like a Field Notes size notebook, or Goulet size, like a 3x5 notebook, so that's pretty awesome. And then, of course, you can fit some extra stuff down in here in the pocket in between. So really cool, ballistic nylon, so vegan friendly, very durable, some cool colors, and $40 for the Sinclair here. And then we're going to be coming out with the Brasstown here pretty soon, because that's soon going to be available. They didn't have both of them ready at the same time, so we had the Sinclair first. Now we're also going to have the Brasstown along with it. So that's going to be coming probably next week, like later next week. What else have we got? The Monteverde Full Blue Anodized, which I realize I don't have here to show you, but we have discounted that pen, and we're going to have it with 3 bottles of ink. So really good deal on that pen right now. We basically, we had done a deal with Monteverde on that to have an exclusive on it, and you know, they had some extras of the pens that we did not realize they had, and so they offered them to us and to make them at a discount, so we're kind of clearing them out. It's the last of these pens that we'll have, so you can get a good deal on those through the holidays, so I'm pretty pumped about that. We've also got Thanksgiveaway in effect. I can zoom back out because I don't have as many products to show now. Thanksgiveaway is in full effect right now. So what is Thanksgiveaway? So I won't summarize the whole thing because we got a whole separate blog post on that. But Thanksgiveaway is essentially what we like to do. It's kind of a joint thing of expressing gratitude, which is one of our values. It also happens to kind of coincide with our company's anniversary, which we consider November 17th to be our anniversary, because that's the day of our first fountain pen product shipment that we ever got in. So that's technically what we consider to be our, you know, anniversary. And then it happens to be right around Thanksgiving time anyway. And rather than doing like the whole, hey, crazy sales and sending you 50 emails a day trying to give you discount this and sale that, we try to just, you know, more express our own gratitude and give thanks. So we have a contest running around Thanksgiveaway, which means basically you write us a handwritten letter about what you're thankful for. That's really about it. And we enter you into this contest. We're giving away some amazing prizes this year. Amazing prizes. Lots of sweet pens, really nice pens, even nicer than we'd initially planned. But we were able to acquire some really nice pens for you there. So you could win any of the 7 sweet pens plus some runner-up prizes on those. So check out full details on our blog there. And then some other things that we're gonna have coming out soon. I mentioned the Nock Brasstown already, but the Twsbi 580 AL Pink, that's gonna be coming out here towards the end of the month. We're gonna have Lamy gift sets as well. Coming more into the holidays, probably towards the end of this month. So that's gonna be a Safari or an All-Star packaged up with a bottle of ink and a converter for a pretty good price as well, and a nice love box package set thing. So great kind of starter set for anybody getting into fountain pens, or a gift, you know, for yourself, for anybody that you know that knows you're into pens and you don't want to have to explain everything to them. You can just say, here, just get this. Sorry, my nose is running a little bit now after sneezing like that. The Parker Urban has been redesigned, which it's so cool because this exact color just happens to match this Nock almost perfectly. But anyway, so this is the redesigned Urban. I gotta say, I've been using it. I've been pretty impressed. The nibs are redesigned. The pen has been streamlined and redesigned. The colors have been revamped. It's pretty cool, and some pretty, decent price range too. So I know Parker has not had a lot of exciting stuff recently in the lower prices, so that might kind of help put them on your radar a little bit. So I would recommend taking a look at those. We're probably not going to be launching those more until the end of the month because we've gotten a couple of colors in, but the rest of them we kind of gotten back ordered on, so we're waiting to get all of them in before we actually launch them, but they are coming. Also have the Visconti Pininfarina Iridium. It's a mouthful there. I don't have one here to show you because we haven't gotten them in yet, but it's a limited edition pen. Crazy looking color scheme on that pen. Really cool looking. And it's a retractable nib too, which you don't see those coming out every day. Definitely on the expensive end, but really cool pen that you should check out. At least look at it and Google and whatever. Also, Lamy Scala is a pen that we've been asked about here and there. Haven't gotten a ton of traction on it, especially on the steel nib one because the price is a little high, but they do have a limited edition gold nib one called Glacier. So it's a special color. It's a special edition one. Did I say limited edition before? Sorry, I meant special edition. It's for their 50th anniversary, so it's got the little Lamy 50 logo on it. So I won't be shooting a whole video on this pen, but if you like the Lamy Studio styling and you want something similar to that, but with a gold nib, this Glacier might be one that you want to check out. So decent pen, something worth checking out. We haven't done the Scala before, so this is kind of testing the waters for us here. And then we're going to have the Leuchtturm, the new colors that are coming out, Nordic and Sand. So Sand is like a beige color, and then the Nordic is a blue, not that far off from my shirt actually. So 2 new colors that are coming out from Leuchtturm. We're going to carry both of those, so we're pretty excited about that. So lots of good stuff coming later this month. But that's it for the moment, and I have lots of questions because I did skip last week. Lots of good questions this week, so I'll get right into it. Starting out with pen and writing questions. This is from Heidi R on Facebook. Says, I'm looking for my first Demonstrator fountain pen. Any recommendations? Pilot Prera, Twsbi, who knows? Okay, I think Twsbi is a great place to start. I really do, because they're an affordable brand. They developed the whole line to be a great price, so that makes it a really great intro level pen. So I have here the Twsbi Eco Lime, which is their most recent color they've come out with. Maybe isn't the color for everybody, but they've got a clear and a black one and a white one, so definitely worth checking those out. I think it's a phenomenal pen for the money. It's a piston filling pen for under $30. Really well made, writes reliably. I definitely think this is one worth checking out. But if you don't like that particular style, there's, they've got the 580, they've got the Mini. This is the Mini right here. So this is also piston filling, $50. Really good value as well. They have decent nib options on these as well. But really, any of the Twsbi pens, they're all kind of in that range of prices around the, the Eco's the cheapest. The rest of them kind of hover around 50, and then there's the VAC, which is a little bit more. But really, I'd recommend any of them. They're all in a Demonstrator version. So definitely those ones are worth checking out. Let's see here, the Prera, sure, you mentioned the Prera in there, so this is going to be a little over the $50 range. If you like the Pilot Metropolitan and the way that pen writes, but you want something a little lighter and you want to be able to see your ink level, the Prera really is a good way to go. It's quite a bit more than the Metropolitan, even though the nib is basically the same, it writes identically, but if you want all the rest of those features, the Prera is worth checking out for you. Some other good ones to recommend, the Lamy Vista, so it's basically a clear Lamy Safari. Very reliable writer, very popular pen, Demonstrator, you get to see all the innards and really good stuff. Workhorse pen, writes really nicely. Nemesign is a newer brand that we've been carrying, but they have a pen called the Singularity, which comes in clear, as well as a number of clear Demonstrator tinted colored Demonstrator pens. So this is a good one to check out. The cool thing about this one too is it's eyedropper convertible, so you can have some fun with that. And so you can kind of go nuts there, get some decent ink capacity. Then you got some Noodler's pens too. If you want a flex nib, you get the Ahab, the Conrad, the Nib Creeper. So those ones are worth checking out if you want something. They're all very affordable price range. The Demonstrator aspect of it, they're a little foggier because it's a different type of resin that's used on these than some of these other ones. So it's got a little bit of yellow tint to it, and it shows scratches easier, but it's also very, very durable. You can like run over a truck with these things. Run it over with a truck. You can't run over a truck with a pen, but you get what I'm saying. So that one is kind of worth checking out. So lots of good options here for you, I think, for good demonstrators. These are all in pretty affordable price ranges. I think the most expensive one is really the Prera. But all solid ones that I think you can have a good time with. All right, this next one is from Hugh C on Instagram. My new Pilot VP, vanishing point, sometimes squeaks when I'm writing, especially on low quality paper. It does not feel scratchy though. Should I be concerned? Okay, so this is a pen that's, a question that is not specific related to the vanishing point. So yes, you're having this issue with your vanishing point, which I have the vanishing point Twilight here, which is a limited edition from last year and is amazing and you can't find it anymore. And so I'm being a total tease by showing it. But anyway, so yes, sometimes this does happen with the vanishing point. I find especially for whatever reason, Pilot, their broad nibs tend to squeak a little bit more than some of their other nibs. I have no idea why that is the case specifically with those, but you know, I've run into this kind of thing with nibs squeaking, not just on Pilot, but on a bunch of other brands too. So it's not anything that's like, oh my gosh, it squeaks, you know, it's thrown out. No, it's really something that's not super duper uncommon, but it's, you know, kind of annoying for some. Some people call it singing and they really like it and they want it to stay that way. Other people, it's just they don't really like it and they want a pen that just is stealthier and silent, you know. So you can fix it. So some tools that you may need in order to do that would be Mylar and micro mesh. Maybe not both, but very simple. So essentially what's causing your nib to squeak or sing or whatever you want to call it, it has to do with resonance. So it's dealing with friction. So the nib itself is ground just so that when you're dragging it across the page, it's actually causing the nib to vibrate and create a tone, you know, sort of like you have a tuning fork or you have, you know, a bow on a violin or something like that, that string vibrates, a guitar, whatever. As it's vibrating, it's hitting a frequency that's giving an audible sound. So that's what's happening as you're dragging your nib across the page. Now, it's probably happening more on your low quality paper because there's more drag on the paper and it's causing a more extreme reaction on the nib. If you use smoother paper, it's not going to give it as much, you know, resistance, and so it's not going to cause the nib to do the same vibration. But on your rougher paper, that's probably why it's doing that. So basically the key to stopping it from doing that is to just take, you know, an abrasive, a very, very fine abrasive, and then just do some nib work on it to get that out of there. And that sounds much more extreme than it really is. Sometimes literally all it is just like a little drag on the micro mesh or even on the Mylar if you don't want to go as extreme as the micro mesh. Mylar could be an even safer way, and you could just kind of touch it on there and do a little bit of playing with it, especially if you're going in one direction, like say you go from left to right, and that's creating that frequency. It's probably your left tine that's causing that problem because that's where it's being kind of dragged across. And so if you drag it in the same motion in very short strokes, so you don't need to put a lot of pressure on it, you just give it a little bit of pressure, and then you would have this flat on a table, but you have a little bit of pressure, and then you just kind of nick it a little bit. You just kind of nick it and kick it away. And that will probably just take off a little bit of that grind so that it would not give so much resistance as you're dragging it across the page. It's really not even going to change the feel of the nib at all, but it would just take enough of that edge away to where it wouldn't drag and then give it that vibration, causing that tone to happen again. So I suspect 98% of the way that's probably what's causing it, and that's probably what would solve it as well. So that goes for the vanishing point, as well as it could be other nibs too. I don't know if it's just like the length of the vanishing point nib that it tends to happen more, but I've had that happen on Falcons as well, the Namiki Pilot Falcon with their broad nibs. I've seen that squeaking happen a little more proportionally more on that pen than on some others. But the same principle goes for, you know, any other pen as it would for that. If you just do that little, you know, that little motion on it, I think that would take care of it. Cool. Oh, and one last point about that is, you know, as you're using the pen, it's probably going to wear away that edge eventually as you're using it to the point where it wouldn't squeak anymore. So even if you don't want to take it to you know, to a sheet of abrasive like that, I think it would go away enough on its own, just naturally, as you kind of wear that away from normal use. So if it's something you don't want to do anything to, I think it would go away on its own. Or, of course, you could always, you know, contact us or whoever you bought it through and just say, hey, I want a pen that doesn't squeak, and we could take care of that for you. So that's where I'll leave it off. This next question is from Andrew K. on Facebook. Is there any way to find people to write to by hand, or is that just being too weird for 2016? Well, Andrew, I can see where you're coming from. There's lots of weird things that people do in 2016, so I would say just don't worry about it. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin and his marketing, guru tactics and things like that he always talks about. And he says that, everybody is weird these days, but the key is to find people that are weird like me, So I would say the fountain pen community is full of people that are weird like me. And so it's okay because that makes you not weird anymore. So you just need to find those people who are weird like you and like to write things by hand. I personally don't think that's weird at all. I think it's amazing and something that is not only a benefit to the person receiving whatever it is you're writing, but it's a benefit to you because you're going to enjoy it and you just process things differently when you're actually writing stuff down. So I think there's a lot of good ways that you can reach out to people. So the first one, I would say, is to just start writing to people in your own family or people that you know, like old friends that you have, especially if you have older family members or somebody that maybe would have grown up actually handwriting things, would super appreciate that. And I think you'd be surprised how much you could actually benefit gaining wisdom from the elder people in your life. So that's kind of the first thing I would look to do is reach out to those people who you actually know and certainly wouldn't judge you for actually writing them a handwritten letter. They would probably be incredibly touched by it and could enrich your life in ways that maybe you wouldn't even expect. So that's the first thing I would do is start out with your own family members. Beyond that, if you want to just go out and try and meet new people through handwriting, there's a couple of ways you can do that. I mentioned NaNoWriMo at the beginning of this Q&A. I think that's one way, through hashtagging. You can look on Instagram or Twitter or other, Facebook, other things, and you can look at the hashtag NaNoWriMo. Chances are, if you got people who are super into writing, especially if you see people that are writing it by hand, chances are if somebody's taking it upon themselves to write an entire novel by hand, they may just like to write other things too. So you could just reach out to them, through a social media channel. It might be a little weird if it's completely unsolicited, but you could go searching through the hashtag and find people who really love to write. And then you could find that in common with them and say, hey, can I write you a letter? Would that be weird? And they might say, yeah, that is weird, or maybe not. Also, there's another program that goes on in February called IncoWriMo, which stands for the International Correspondence Writers Month. If you look up that hashtag, now granted it's going to be a little old now because it was back in February, which is a number of months ago at this point, but still I'm willing to bet that people that signed up to literally correspond to strangers through this IncoWriMo program, you could probably bet that they might like to receive letters too, and you could always reach out to them and see if you could write them a letter to them, or if they would write you a letter or whatever. So just looking through hashtags through social media platforms, I think would be a good way to find out people that are into writing stuff, or just looking at, just Google those terms, and there might be various websites and blogs and forums and things like that where people have said, yeah, I would love to do this. I also think you could look at the Fountain Pen Network. So people that are into fountain pens, obviously that's a big forum that has lots of information about fountain pens, but I specifically have a link on there. There's one that I found a sticky thread that was in one of the subforums on handwriting that has people that want to write letters to each other. It's just fountain pen enthusiasts. They don't know each other, but they're all members of the Fountain Pen Network, and they sign up to be able to write each other letters. So I've got a link on the blog through this question. If you look on the Q&A, you can check that out. Or you can just click around on the Fountain Pen Network and find it yourself. But I think that's a great way that you can connect with some people that would be very open to getting handwritten letters too. So lots of good ways that you could do it if you want to actually correspond with other people. So some ways are a little more intrusive than others, but I think in general, if you stick with the people that are volunteering for these handwriting type of contests and things like that, then there's probably a good bet that they might be willing to engage in that with you. So there you go. All right, this question is the last writing question this week. This is from John E. on Facebook. It says, I know you mainly give points about pens you sell, but are there pens without threads and step-ups? The Lamy 2000 and the Pilot E95s come to mind. Okay, so I tried to think, a lot of times I talk about pens that I sell because those are the ones I know the best. So I have a couple here that I don't sell that I can mention, but I do actually, I did some research, and as I was looking through my pen collection, I found that there's a number of pens that kind of fit in your criteria here. So specifically, you're talking about a pen like the Lamy 2000, which is a cool pen because it has a very fluid, ooh, I got a little bit of ink on there. How about that? I've been tossing this pen around a little bit. So this pen is very sleek. You know, I think it kind of looks like a blimp in a weird way, but it doesn't have a step up. It doesn't have anything obtrusive. All it has is these tiny little ears which link onto the internal mechanism inside the cap that cause it to click into place. So you're asking me about a pen like this that maybe has a less obtrusive method of connecting its cap, right? So that's kind of the interpretation I took from your question, and that's where I'm going to go with. So I have a number of pens here that I think kind of fit into that category. One, first off, would be the Pilot Vanishing Point. Decimo is the thinner version of this, but same concept. So it doesn't have a step up or anything like that because it's a click retractable pen. So kind of a different vibe than what you were going for here perhaps, but very kind of sleek body as well. It does have just a little transition of material here, but no real step right at the nose where the clip, you know, connects to the nose piece and then it goes to the body, but very slick, very transitional there. So that's one option for you. The Faber-Castell Loom is one, definitely a lower price too, which is kind of nice. But it has a snap cap that connects right at the grip. So where the grip starts, it's a very smooth transition. It goes right into the body. So really no step up of any kind, no threads at all. It is low ribbed on here very gently on the grip itself, which actually is kind of nice just for you to hold on to it. But very unobtrusive grip section there. So that's one worth checking out. Had the Lamy logo, which is kind of an interesting pen. It's got a ribbed grip section on here, but again, it's got the same thing going on that Faber-Castell has. It does not have threads or anything. It actually locks on to this little section right on the top of the grip. So it connects there and then it doesn't have any kind of transition. And this pen is completely straight all the way down. So if you happen to like that, by all means. Also, I think the Lamy Safari All-Star Vista, the Luxe, granted, it's got a little bit more of a transition here, so I don't know if this technically qualifies in there, but again, it's got the same thing where it grabs right at the end of the grip section. So it does have a little transition, but it's not nearly as drastic as most others, and it doesn't have any threads or anything, so that could work. Now, granted, it's got a triangular grip, so that could, or, you know, be considered whatever, a factor for you, but really not too bad. So those are pens worth checking out. What else have I got? Whew, I got more. The Pilot Sterling, I actually don't have mine on me at the moment, but that's one to check out. Higher price pen, it's in the $600 range. But that one too is a snap cap, very minimal transition on that one. The Pilot Firmo, which this is one that we don't sell anymore, but we did at one point. It's really a vanishing point that instead of being a click retractable is a twist retractable. So it writes exactly like a vanishing point, but very, you know, no transition. I was going to say very minimal transition, no transition at all, because you just twist the back of it and that's how the nib comes out. So nothing to worry about, no threads or anything there. So that one's worth looking into if that floats your boat. The Lamy Dialogue 3, that's actually one pen that I don't have that we used to sell, but we no longer do. And I don't even have one to show you, but that's another twist retractable one that doesn't have any transition on it. And then the last one I have, this is not even made anymore, but this is kind of more along with your E95s. The E95s actually does have a transition, but it's got a very long grip, so the transition's really at the back. Kind of along that same vibe is the Pilot M90, which is a vintage pen from the 90s that has a very long grip section, and it does have a transition piece, but it's much further back that would not be obtrusive to your grip at all, and then allows you to kind of snap it onto the back. So very similar design to the E95s, but if you happen to want to really overpay for a pen because it's vintage now, you could get this pen. It's a pretty sweet pen. It's a stainless steel pen that has the nib integrated into the body, but you're going to pay like $400 or $500 for this pen. It's really more than it's worth. It's just because it's vintage and they're hard to find. But that's that pen. I think it's cool. It's a really sweet pen. But there you go. I think that'll give you a nice little mix of pens there that you can look into. All right, I got a few ink questions this week. This is from Con1259 on Instagram, or 1259 as you may pronounce it. What is the best work-friendly permanent ink? I use Noodler's X-Feather at the moment, but it clogs my feed and takes ages to dry. Okay, so X-Feather is a very thick ink. It's kind of one of the thickest fountain pen inks that's really talked about. So I think it's not surprising that that one is causing you maybe some clogging things and taking a while to dry. It's meant to be thick so that it doesn't soak into the paper quite as much and it resists feathering. That's kind of the design of the ink. There's a lot of other Noodler's inks, like Noodler's Black and Heart of Darkness, that are similar properties to that, but aren't as thick, so would not cause you quite as much of a problem. Very, very popular colors. I use Noodler's Black a lot. Heart of Darkness is really similar, kind of interchangeable almost with black. So I think either of those would be a good alternative. You could also water down your X Feather a little bit. Just use some distilled water or regular tap water if you don't really care about, if you know you've got decent water and you don't want to, worry about distilled water. That would dilute the ink a little bit, thin it up. So that's another thing you could try. I would do it in a small amount first just to test it. I wouldn't go diluting your entire bottle, because then if you screw it up or dilute it too much, you can't really undo it very easily. So that's something to consider. Some other ones that I think are worth mentioning, and these are, to be work-friendly ones, I consider these to be like pretty dark, generally subdued and pretty well saturated colors that also kind of perform pretty decent. So these are all going to be permanent inks. Noodler is 54th Massachusetts. It's a blue-black, very much leans on the gray side. I think that one would be good. A little bit on the thicker side too, so not quite as much as X Feather, but generally performs pretty well on most papers. Very popular ink color, so that one is worth consideration. If you don't want one a little bit less hassle, a little more of a blue tone, less gray, would be Lamy Noodler's blue-black. Noodler's number 41 brown. That's a brown color, obviously, by its name. That's got a permanent side. Noodler's Lexington gray. So that's a gray ink. Really kind of looks like a pencil ink, pencil colored ink, like a graphite color. It's the only really good permanent gray that's out there. I know Faber-Castell also has a gray. It's not quite as permanent as Lexington gray though. Diatramentis has some decent ones. Of course, they have all their document inks, which they can feather a little bit and they can dry out a little bit in some pens. So, you could certainly use those, but some other ones that they have, Diatramentis, black, brown, maybe the blue ones. So if those document colors are really to your liking, you can check those out. Maybe the green one, that might be a little bright for you. Depends on if green would be considered a work appropriate ink for you. Of course, if you work at a place like Goulet Pens here, any ink color is work appropriate, but go figure. And then lastly, I have Rohrer and Klingner, Salix or Scabiosa. Those are both iron gall inks. They're not like full-on crazy iron gall formula. They're a very modified formula. So I just have to throw in a little word of caution with iron gall. They tend to be formulated so that they can be somewhat corrosive. I haven't really heard of anybody using those inks that's caused any type of a problem with pens. True iron gall inks are dip pen inks, and they're very corrosive, but the modern fountain pen inks like the Salix and Scabiosa are really pretty tame. I think it's just the iron gall component of it that makes it permanent is kind of still there, but it's not going to be that crazy. So just a little word of caution there, but nice colors there and good permanence to those. So it's worth checking all those out. Of course, there's lots of others that could be considered in there. It all depends what you consider to be work appropriate, but those are some of the ones I would recommend the most. All right, Alexander Shoe on Instagram. What are some good dark purple inks? I love the color of Private Reserve Tanzanite, but I found that it doesn't work very nicely with some of my pens, so I'm looking for similar alternatives. Tanzanite's a good color. I actually don't carry it anymore. We dropped Private Reserve as a brand a little while back. Never made a big stink about it, but it just was kind of slowly on the decline for us, and we kind of just made the decision to cut it. So that was one of their better colors, though, for sure. So there's some good alternatives, though. Diatramentis Aubergine or Alexander Hamilton, they're basically the same color, but the Alexander Hamilton has just got the theme to it, as well as Magenta Violet. Those are all really solid purples. I think they're really great colors. Magenta Violet's a little bit brighter in color, not quite as dark. With Aubergine or Alexander Hamilton, it'll be closer to that Tanzanite, but Magenta Violet's still just a great color. Diamond Majestic Purple might be in there too. And then there's Bilberry, which is really going to be kind of a darker color, but it's worth checking out. And then if you want something with a little bit of permanence to it, Noodler's North African Violet could be an option. That ink is a little bit higher maintenance, a little tougher to clean out of your pens. So if you want an alternate to that in the Noodler's family that's not quite as much maintenance, Noodler's Purple might be a good one for you to check out. Cool. All right, Murdock Grewar on YouTube. I can't spend too much on inks, but I love switching up the colors in a pen quite often. Because of this, I mix my inks. If you were to recommend a selection of just 4 or 5 inks for the maximum range of colors, what would they be? And does diluting an ink with water work to brighten it, or does the color look washed out? Okay, so you got 2 questions in here. and I will start off with the first one. So I think if you were just trying to get the maximum color range as possible with as few colors as you could, there's a good formula for doing that the printing industry has been using for years. It's called CMYK. So it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And essentially you can get whatever color you want by mixing those 4 colors. Okay, so that's really what I would recommend. I think Noodlers has a few, and then Diatramentis has a few that would also work. So I'm going to recommend Noodlers for kind of your normal inks, and then the Diatramentis ones for your document, your permanent inks. And the Noodlers ones are a much better price per milliliter, so that's why I'll start off with those if you want to mix it up, because it seems like, you know, price is more of a factor for you. So for cyan, which is the blue color, Noodler's Navajo Turquoise, I think is a really great cyan color and great properties to that ink. Magenta would be the Noodler's Shaw's Rose. Yellow would be Noodler's Yellow, and then black, Noodler's Black, or it could be Heart of Darkness, whatever. But I think Noodler's Black would be pretty good. And those are all mixable inks with each other. You can mix and match them to whatever ratio you want. Of course, Noodler's Black does have a permanent, you know, is permanent, so the black component would be permanent in whatever your mixture is, but you obviously wouldn't mix too much Noodler's Black in there because then it would just look black. So if you want to mix a little bit of black, you could, but those 4 would get you to whatever color that you are looking to get to. Of course, you'd play around with that quite a bit. So then if you wanted to go with the Diatramentis documents for more a truly permanent mixture, you could do document turquoise for the cyan, the fuchsia for magenta, document yellow for the yellow color, and document black for black. So pretty straightforward. And then I can't give you any specific formulas for doing that CMYK mixture, but my parents actually worked in the printing industry for most of when I was a child, so I actually grew up being pretty familiar with 4-color presses and 5-color presses and things like that. So I have memories of when my parents had a print shop, and this is when I was in middle school. I never did this when they were around, but I would ride around on a pallet jack like it was a scooter, you know, like one of those huge pallet jacks, and I would ride around the print shop on a pallet jack at pretty high speeds around these like $1 million presses. And now that I think back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had like crashed into one of those things, I could have sunk my parents' business. But I never did, so we're all good. But anyway, weird memories I have from growing up in a print shop. But anyway, so that's where we're at. So that's kind of the way to do the mixture. And then specifically you're talking about diluting the ink or brightening it or whatever. If you just use just plain water, it's not really going to brighten it up. It'll really just dilute it. It'll wash out the color, kind of what you're describing. So if you want to actually brighten up the ink and make it a lighter color without giving it just that more of a watery look, you would use a white ink. So on the Noodler side, you have the whiteness of the whale. So say you have a red color and you want to make it a lighter pink color. You would add white to it, and that would help to make it still a vibrant color, but just lighter in tone than you would if you just added water. If you had water, it wouldn't really change the color, the hue of the ink a lot. It would just kind of wash it out and make it less saturated. So, and then on the Diatramentis has a document white ink as well that you could mix with the others and get kind of the same effect. So, the other option too is Diatramentis actually has a dilution liquid. So the dilution liquid is meant to have, it's essentially a clear ink. It's a clear permanent ink, if that makes sense. So it allows you to dilute the ink without making it more watery. It doesn't necessarily help in terms of making it brighter, but it does keep the permanence and keeps the flow and the quality of the ink to be consistent, whereas if you're using just water, it's going to change the flow and wetness and stuff like that more so than if you use an actual dilution liquid. So that's kind of what that's for. But in that Diatramentis dilution liquid, it's made for the Diatramentis inks, but I've seen other people use it with other inks too with some varying degrees of success. So that's something experimental that you would do, but yeah, that would be my recommendation. We'll go with CMYK, a couple different color options for you here. This isn't something, now that I think about it, it's not something we've ever had set up as a package set on our site. But now that I think about it, for you ink mixophiles, it might be something of interest to you. So let me know in the comments if this is really like, if you're like, oh my gosh, this is changing my world, can I please get a set? You know, we could probably put a set together with these CMYK colors and then, you know, offer some sample vials and ink syringes and stuff like that, maybe with some pen flush or something, I don't know. We could put a little set together. I'll give that some thought. I don't know, I'll talk to Rachel, we could even have it set up soon, but it's something that if there was interest, I'd be open to that. I got a paper question this week. So this is from Guster J on Facebook. How do I know, aside from the obvious feathering and bleed through, that my paper is high enough quality? I have Hilroy Studio Pro Sketchbook. It's 50-pound paper, acid-free, and it says versatile paper for use with pencils, charcoals, pastels, and pens. It doesn't bleed through and doesn't feather. Is that indication enough that it's a high enough quality to use? I've never heard of Hilroy Studio before, but more power to you for finding a notebook that seems to work really well for you. There's a lot of brands of notebooks that could potentially work well with fountain pens. The difficult thing is there's really no like standard for what is a fountain pen friendly notebook. It's something that just fountain pen enthusiasts such as myself will deem a brand to be fountain pen friendly or not. There's really, the most I've kind of ever seen has been like certain brands saying like ink proof or bleed proof or whatever. But even then, it's not a surefire bet because there is no standardization for this kind of thing. And there's a lot of factors involved. The weight of the paper, the size of the nib that you're using, you know, broader nibs and italics and stuff like that will put down more ink. You know, flex pens, they'll put down more ink than a fine nib will. So somebody may test it and only test it with fine and medium nibs and it works fine. I've tested a number of different notebooks and I'm going like this with my hand because I literally have 2 bookshelves over here that are filled with all kinds of products that I have tested and, you know, been interested in carrying. Okay, I don't have 2 bookshelves filled with that. I probably have 1 shelf's worth of products that I have tested that seemed promising that really ultimately just didn't quite hold up. It's really difficult to make paper that is high enough quality to really be good fountain pen friendly ink. It's pretty intentional to make paper a certain way to be ink resistant for fountain pens, which is especially in the US is really not very common because this is not a very fountain pen centric culture. So it's an additional expense, a lot of different steps involved in making a paper fountain pen friendly, so to speak. So most companies aren't going to do that unless they have to. So even in the brands like Rhodia and Clairefontaine and other ones that really are known for being some of the best fountain pen friendly paper, even they don't have some kind of fountain pen friendly designation to them. So unfortunately, for your sake and everyone else's, there is no good standard. Yes, if it says this on it, I will know that it will be fountain pen friendly up to an acceptable standard. It's really not like that, I'm sorry. So probably the best thing is to look at some certain language, like, you know, for archivability, you want it to be acid free like yours says. pH neutral is a good one to have as well. Sometimes it'll be pH neutral, they just want to advertise it. But the acid free and the pH neutral are really big because that's what's going to keep the paper from like yellowing and crackling and breaking down. Like if you ever look at an old newspaper, it's been around for a couple of years in your attic or whatever, it gets like really yellow, dingy and all that. That's the acids, lignins, that's breaking down that paper and it's not going to last all that long. So you want to get paper that's neutral in that way so that it's not going to break itself down over time. But then really it's the coating on the paper and other stuff, which paper weight can be an indication. Generally speaking, you want some thicker paper, you know, something in the range of a 70 to 80 gram paper, which is going to put you 50 pound. It's really going to be 50 pounds is going to be pretty decent. I forget exactly what the pound to gram ratio is, but you're going to want probably a higher pound ratio. Usually you want your poundage, you want to be closer to like 90 or 110, something like that, I believe. Or is that too thick? I'm really blanking right now. You'll have to forgive me. But whatever, the thickness of the paper is almost elusive. It'll tell you the weight of the paper, but it doesn't really tell you how much the ink is going to absorb into it. That really has more to do with the coating of the paper than it does anything else, not necessarily just the weight. The weight will really tell you how much it's going to ghost, and you're going to be able to see through it on the other side. Not to the point where it like bleeds through, but just if it's sitting on the other side, are you going to be able to see through it and see the ink sitting on the other side there? So that's really where the weight comes in a lot. But yeah, aside from that, aside from just experimenting and trying and picking up on these little things here and there, best thing is to just look at product reviews, read some blogs, look at websites like ours that are very fountain pen centric, and look at the products that you see there. Generally speaking, you're gonna see more fountain pen friendly notebooks on a site that sells more fountain pens, obviously, than you would, say, if you walked into, you know, Barnes & Noble or something like that and just picked up any given notebook, you know, there off the shelf. Chances are you're going to have a harder time finding it at a place that doesn't focus on fountain pens. Cool. And for this week, the final question that I have is a business question. This is from Mariner Hoff on YouTube, and says, I'm blown away by the quality and genuine attitude of your customer service. Thank you, and thank my team. I'm a manager of a customer support team at a startup. What advice would you give to a team that aspires to your caliber of customer service? Well, I am all kinds of flattered on this question. Thank you very much. I appreciate the high compliments, and I will pass those compliments right along to my customer care team because they are the ones actually delivering on this for you every day. But I'm going to give it to you, since you are managing a team. I'm going to give it to you as a manager, from a manager-owner's kind of perspective, because I have that perspective, and that's, you know, part of the whole Q&A thing, is you get to tap into my brain a little bit. So I won't talk as much about like in principle, but like really some of the practical things that we've done. So advice that I would give, so I'm super proud of our team. I really am. Got a lot of great people there, and we've really tried to set it up in such a way that we are really known for our customer service. So it's very gratifying for me to hear that you're taking that away from what we deliver on every day. So it takes a lot of work to make it happen. It's definitely not an accident. You can't just do the mirror test, you know, on somebody that you're looking to hire into a position like this. The mirror test, what that is, you know, you hold a mirror in front of their face, and if they fog it up, they get the job. It's really not how this works, especially if you want a good team that really cares. You have to hire intentionally for people that are made for this role. So for us personally here, our core values are really lived out very heavily in our customer service. And I could literally go through every single one of our core values and explain to you what that actually looks like in practicality. But I'm going to refrain from doing that just because I don't want to go on and all day about our values. But we have 7 core values, and my customer care team lives them out every single day. But I pulled out a couple of key ones that I think are really important. So care is the first one. So I think care, it starts from the top, right? Like the owners, the founders of the company, you as their manager, you have to care about what service you're providing. If you don't have a customer-centric business, and customer service is viewed as, we have to answer this just so that people don't go and complain and give us bad Yelp reviews or something like that. So let's just hire the people as cheaply as possible and just get them to, you know, get people to run around so that we hear as few complaints as possible. If you're viewing that as a defensive mechanism, you're never going to have a great customer service team. You really need to look at it as kind of being on the offense of, we really want a team that's going to help people and make the experience better and be a selling point for our company. That's the mentality that the ownership needs to have about your customer service in your company. And it's going to be different for every company. Obviously, there's different needs for every type of customer service, but for us, that's what we've chosen to do. We have a very strong community around fountain pens, and there's a lot of troubleshooting involved. There's a lot of education involved, and there's a lot of new people that we bring into the hobby that have a lot of questions. And having a team that really cares about answering those questions and doing a good job and really just caring kind of throughout the whole thing. That's one of our core values. That's really a big one that goes there. So kind of setting the business up from the start to be that way, and then really just hiring people into that role that really care a lot, and then training them well, really providing them with the right tools and the right ability to be able to serve people well is really important. Kind of the next one I would say is passion. Okay, so we had care, now we have passion. Passion, what I mean by that is hiring the right type of people into that role that are really wired to want to serve people. So if you hire somebody and they're selfish and they are rude and they do not have a great attitude naturally, you're pretty much not going to be able to have them be good in a customer service type role. You want people who naturally enjoy talking to people, who enjoy helping people, who enjoy serving people. If you hire motivated people, then you will never have to motivate them. Does that make sense? So it's a lot of it's in the hiring process and making sure that it's the right fit for the role. Now, of course, it's easier in a business like this where there's a lot of fun, passionate kind of stuff, but I would say in any business you can find people that are like that. If you're selling, I'm not going to pick on any particular industry, but it might be more difficult for like industrial equipment or something like that to find people than it is for fun things like ink and pens and stuff like that. But honestly, maybe not. Maybe industrial equipment for the right person is super fun and they really get excited about that. And you might find some really passionate people that are into that. I think there's people that can be found that are passionate about just about everything. I think just maybe it's not as much a focus to find those people in certain industries than others. But I think it's critically important to find the right people that are passionate about serving others to be able to derive a lot of their own personal satisfaction. Because when you hire the right person for the role, it's going to just make everything else so much easier. And we do a lot of vetting around here to make sure that people are the right fit for the roles, really for all positions, but especially for that customer service. And then the last one that I'll leave you with here is trust. So you have to have your team's back. You know what I mean? Like our customer service folks, they are, dealing one-on-one with people. Sometimes people that have communication barriers, sometimes with people that have just had a really bad day and they are just looking for a fight. It doesn't happen a lot. I will say that in the grand scheme of things, we have a really good community here and my customer care team doesn't get beat up too much, but every now and then they get somebody that's just had a really bad day and they just want to let somebody have it. But our team knows that we have their back, that we give them autonomy and the ability to be able to take care of customers without having to go through a lot of layers of bureaucracy, but also to know that we are going to support them in their decisions that they make, and especially if a certain customer is really taking things too far. We've had situations here before where we've had people been spoken to inappropriately, should I say, in inappropriate language and suggestive manners, that we have had to essentially fire that customer and say, you cannot talk to my team this way. I've talked to customers before and say, I'm sorry, but you're being really rude and inappropriate. I do not want your business anymore. You cannot treat my team like that anymore. It doesn't happen often, but knowing my team knowing that Drew, their manager, that really everybody here in our company, like we have each other's back, is really important. And the message that I like to give to my team is that the customer is not always right, but the customer is always the customer. So what that means in my mind is it doesn't mean that anybody can say anything to you just because they bought a $20 pen. There's a certain degree of respect as a human being that you are owed from another person who's interacting with you in a business setting. That doesn't mean you just get walked all over all the time, because that will beat somebody up and they will not last long term in customer service if they're just a doormat. You know what I mean? So my team, I empower them so that they are able to help customers and maintain their dignity at the same time. But at the same time, the customer is always the customer. They always deserve to be treated with respect, and there's a certain degree of trust here. The reason trust is our currency is one of our core values here at Goulet Pens is there is an exchange involved when it comes to trust, right? So I trust my team that they will be able to help customers. We actually have, certain very loose policies in place that empower them to just be able to take care of customers. We don't have a specific policy for every single situation, for every single little thing, so that we can try to save a buck here and there. We empower them quite a bit, really, with the ability to autonomously make decisions to say, just look, if a customer needs help, you just make it right. You know, so we have kind of a dollar amount in mind and we say, look, if you just need to make this right, we will let you make that judgment call. But that shows a lot of trust on the part of my team. And likewise, they trust us a lot to be able to take care of them and provide them training and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's an exchange. Likewise, there's a trust between the customer and our customer care folks. So you're trusting that they know what they're talking about. They're trusting that you are going to, you know, give them good feedback and provide them with, you know, accurate information as you know. And so it's really a lot that goes into there. Trust is a huge thing that I think is kind of the root of why in most situations you don't end up with a good customer service experience, because there isn't trust that goes on and it becomes very bureaucratic, it becomes very scripted, very impersonal, and that's just kind of at a very high level. You know, there's a good book that's written by Stephen M.R. Covey. So this is the son of the guy who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's called The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything. And really it just talks about how when you don't have trust, that's where you have contracts and lawyers reviewing every single step of every single thing, and there's just this really kind of cold distance between everything, and it takes a long time to make anything happen. Whereas if you think about like some of your most trusted family members or your children or whatever, you have a lot quicker, deeper interactions with them because there is trust built there. It's the same kind of thing. If you build that with your customer service team or really any type of team, if you have a lot of trust, you can empower them and you can make decisions and help people so much faster and better and more efficiently. It's just a better way of doing business. So trust is huge. So that's where I'll leave you with those thoughts there. I think that's a lot to stew on, but it's not like one magical thing to make your team, you know, better, but a lot of it has to do with trust and then finding the right people for the role. So that's it for this week. Those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A here. I'm going to plan on being back next week as well. Yeah, it's really pretty good. Doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. The question of the week for this week is, what are your favorite work-friendly inks and why? I'm just kind of curious to know, like, what do you consider to be work-appropriate inks or work-friendly or whatever? What are your favorite inks to use in that situation? I'm just curious to know. So if you could leave me some feedback in the comments, I would love to pick it up and read on it. Colin can read it on YouTube, and Lydia can read it on the blog. We're all kind of covering all bases these days. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A. Hope you have a great weekend and a great rest of your week, and right on.